Hey, Dimmit County. My name is Peter Bettis III. I'm just an ordinary citizen who cares about his community, just like you. I'm excited today because we're going to have a little sit down with one of our candidates who's running for the county judge seat, a very important seat in our community, and we're very thankful to be with Paula Seidel. I want to encourage you, as you watch this conversation, be engaged. Please share it with someone today. Inform yourself and get out and vote. Hey, Paula, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Peter. I'm fine, thank you.
Great. Before we begin, Paula, just for our viewers, could you explain a little bit about the county judge position and the duties of a county judge for those who may not know?
Well, the purpose of the position or of being a county judge, Peter, are really to be the administrator of the county business. Okay. The county is a business. And so I think it's important that people who have a background in business look at that as most important. There's other functions that the county judge does, but really he's in charge of how the county is run.
Okay. And for those who may not understand as well, the responsibilities of the commissioners and then, of course, the county judge position, this all has to do with the roads, bridges, and things that need to be attended to in our community, correct?
That's right. You've hit it right on the button. It's the infrastructure. What happens in each precinct. Each commissioner, of course, is responsible for their own precinct and their own workers and how they do that job and trying to keep up all the work that has to be done in the county.
Okay. And along with that is management of the budget as well for the county?
Absolutely. And that's one of the important things, too, because each one of them, of course, is part of when they do the budget preparation. They have to put in their input on what's happening and what they need done.
And when it comes to the commissioners, we have 4. Yes. The county judge also acts as the chief officer. So doesn't matter what's being discussed or what budget's being proposed or which road or bridge is being fixed, everybody has to agree on a vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's why it's important to know who our county judges and, of course, our commissioners and what they're doing in our community, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move on to our first question, a very important one for our viewers. Could you tell our citizens a little bit about who you are and why you decided to run for the county judge position?
Yeah. Well, of course, my name is Paula Seidel. I am the daughter of Tomas Campos and Feliz Patlan Campos, 2 families that have been part of this community for a long time. So I can honestly say that my roots are buried deep here. I am married to David Seidel. We have 1 son, Robert Anthony, who still lives up in the Chicago area. I was born here in Carrizo Springs, but I grew up in one of the suburbs of Chicago. And there I went to school, went to college, got married, and started my careers. In 2000, we decided to come back and make Carrizo Springs our permanent home. And here we are.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. I'm sure that information will help a lot of our viewers if they don't know who you are. And it's really great to see kind of the transition in life that brings you back to this community. I know that one of the important things a lot of members in our community want are people who will remain rooted here for the purpose of making Dimmit County better. So I really appreciate that. Now, our second question, and we have a whole list of questions, Dimmit County, so please hang with us and walk through these questions with us. Our second question is, if elected, what would you change or improve?
I'm going to answer this in 2 parts, Peter.
Okay.
Communication to me is priority. The communication between the county and the citizens or the people of the county seems to have kind of broken, right? They feel a disconnect. They don't always know what's going on, and they feel like they don't matter. We need to improve that. I know it's hard because, especially with our elderly citizens, they don't have access to the media like we do. They don't have access to Facebook. Some of them read the paper, some of them don't. So we have to come out with a better way of informing our mature citizens, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
The other part is that I attended a mass casualty attack workshop last week in Uvalde. Okay. What I learned was that the communications between even law enforcement agencies don't work. The Border Patrol may be able to hear what the sheriffs are doing, but the sheriffs don't always hear what's going on that side.
Yeah.
When we look at mass casualty, the fact that those seconds count, and you've got to be able to get people in communication so you can figure out how to handle the situation. Yeah. The other part is that even our own deputies. Dimmit County is widespread, right? A lot of times you only have one deputy on duty who's out there cruising. Yeah. A lot of times his radio does not work, so he has to pick up his cell phone. Now, that's a problem. And the way to fix that, I learned, was that we need to improve either the towers or the repeaters that are in the county, so there is no loss of communication between the deputies. This is very important. This is not only for the safety of them, but for our safety as well.
Well, those are some interesting points. I'm sure that many aren't even aware that that has been an issue. Yes. So one thing I do want to add to that question is the fact that these questions are from our community themselves. So any question I ask you has been derived through a poll online. And so these are important questions that the community has. So we want to let everyone know who's watching this conversation, this interview, know that these aren't my own personal questions. Yes. These are questions for our community. And what we really want to do through this conversation is bring it down to the citizen level. I'm here. I don't have a particular position in Dimmit County. I'm just a regular citizen bringing these questions. And I'm acting as if you were here in my position discussing these questions with our candidates. So just keep that in mind as we walk along. Number 3, or third question. Now, residents have seen advertisements by both candidates that state it is time for change. We see that it is time for change. It's time for change. But why do you feel that you can get enough support and a vote on Commissioner's Court to make the changes that you hope for?
Well, I would hope that the relationships that we have in Commissioner's Court, with the 5 of us being there, right, are going to be able to come to a decision that the majority will approve. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that people don't have a right to their opinion. We all have a right to our opinions, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is that we work on decisions, or we should work on decisions that are going to be for the better of the community and for the majority of the people. I think that the Commissioner's Court at this time sits that in a place where it's going to be okay. You know, we're going to be all right with figuring out what is best for our people.
Okay. Now, I want to also add to that. When it comes to Commissioner's Court, we have the agendas that are posted online, the times. So I want to encourage you as well. If you want to know what's happening in our community, as a citizen, please make sure to attend Commissioner's Court when you are able. As we listen to the conversations and the agendas and items that are put out during these meetings, it's important that you're also aware of that. And you can also see our county judge and commissioners have discussions and to see how they vote. So I want to encourage you to do that. Okay, our next question. Now, as with anything, some citizens hope for change, while others may wish for current trends, programs, or practices to continue. Right. So what are some trends, programs, or practices from the current county judge that you wish to continue to better ease the doubts that some citizens may have now that change might be coming? And I kind of want to put this together for us, and I think this is a really good question. And we know that many in our community might see it's time for change, and maybe some say, well, we don't want that much change. We'd rather that certain things continue on the way that they are. Right. Of course, when we have any new candidate, we want things to get better. We want to implement newer ideas. Right. So what are some of the things that you might keep if you were in that judge position, and then maybe some other trends that you might implement that you believe would bring us further prosperity in Dimmit County?
Okay, I think the important part of that question is to really take a look at what policies and procedures are in the current administration, okay? That's going to be a challenge for somebody coming in. We need to take a look. What is working? What is not working? How can we improve? And I think that's going to go to the part where I am going to be talking to the commissioners, the department heads, the supervisors, and even maybe down to the employee level. They're out there doing their job every day. I don't know what their job is yet, right?
Sure.
So they can see what is working, and they can see what is not working. I don't have any particular policies that I am looking at right now to change from what the current administration has, until I get into the actual, part of the policies that I'm going to be able to read and look at and find out, okay, so maybe this is something that needs to be changed. You can't go in, Peter, and wave the magic wand and change everything at once. That's not feasible. That doesn't really work, right? Because the things that are working should be kept working. Things that aren't working, maybe it's time we take a look at that.
Okay.
You know?
Then I have a question. If you were to evaluate what the current administration has in place, if there's anything that you and, of course, the commissioners agree that needs to change, would that be put out publicly? Would the citizens know that these changes are coming?
I would like to think that if it's that important, that the community does need to know. They really do. And I think we need to, like I said, expand that further and get the information out as much as we can to people. They have a right to know, especially when it comes to big changes that we're doing. If we're really changing something that's going to affect the citizens, I think they have the right to know, Peter.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our next question. This election for Dimmit County Judge officially began back in about November 2021. Now, what are some things that you have done for Dimmit County before you became a candidate back in November of 2021?
Well, that I'm going to have to tell you is being part of the Chamber of Commerce, very involved in the community, Peter. The Chamber of Commerce has brought back events into the county to bring people back. I think it's important that people realize that once the oil and gas boom hit, they were coming to the Chamber office asking, how can we help your community? Yeah. Being the network for that and being part of all that happened, it gave us the opportunity to do the bull ride, to do the cancer walk, the barbecue cook-offs. We are doing the community egg hunts, right? Mm-hmm. We do the veterans events. Yeah. We do the luncheon for the Texas Vietnam Veterans Memorial Highway, which is Highway 83. Carrizo Springs is one of their stops that they've been doing since 2006. Yeah. So because of the chamber, there's a lot of involvement that I've been part of. And I'm really glad for that. That's a big advantage.
Most definitely, and we see, a lot of those great things that have happened in our community. Many of us are a part of them, or have been a part of them. So we do appreciate that coming into our community and that experience as well. Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our next question. How do you plan to involve the residents of Dimmit County in the decision-making process in our community?
I thought about that question. It's kind of a hard question because you need to try and poll people or survey people, right? And right now, I know that people who are familiar with media can do their little surveys or whatever. Yeah. But again, I worry about the people who are not connected to the media. How do we go out and engage, especially, again, the older folks, those who aren't involved? Yes, is it as simple as putting just a survey in the paper? If they're interested, sign it, bring it back. Oh, you don't have to sign it. We just want to know what they're thinking. The day-to-day scope of my job, because I'm out there in the community, it's nothing for people to stop and ask me questions. I mean, it's just something that happens, Yeah. And I think that's still, that face-to-face communication and that asking is important. But you're right, that's going to be a challenge to try and get all the people's opinions on something that they want to see.
Yeah, I think in this particular question, it really comes back to connectivity and transparency, which is going to be our next question. Right. But it's the pulse of the community that feels that they're not being heard. So we of course know that, for example, many of our community are online, just like those of you who are watching this interview. And this is kind of a quick way to disseminate information. Mm-hmm. The other half of our community would be reading the newspaper. Right. So how do we continue to connect the community in a broad way? It definitely is a challenge. So thank you for the answer, being transparent with that particular question. My challenge would be to our community, if you have a suggestion or an idea in your experience as a community member or being involved in any type of position, whether it's school board or city, if you have a suggestion, please leave one in the comments. So that segues us into our next question, which I mentioned before is very important to our community. It's very important to me, and this is why I'm personally here. This is why we're having this conversation. Now, this next question kind of segues us into the very same important topic of transparency, and it's similar to the question I asked before, but it's one that is very important to our community. One of our biggest concerns one of the biggest concerns of our community has to do with transparency. The issues with local government institutions, which include the city, the school board, etc. How will you better connect our community? Will you allow live streams for every meeting? Would you be willing to change the hours that Commissioners Court is regularly scheduled, within reason, of course, so that more people in our community can attend?
I think the first part of that is, you're right, transparency. They want to know what's going on, okay? We have to look at also the rules that are involved in the Commissioners Court meetings. I don't know what their policies are as far as live streaming. I'm assuming that it's a public meeting place, so there really shouldn't be a problem with that, right? The changing of the time of the meeting is something that really needs to be looked at. And the reason why, because if you've ever been in Commissioner's Court, sometimes those agendas are very lengthy, very lengthy. The people making presentations to the county commissioners, what they want to bring in, or a bid that was taken or something like that, those people sometimes come from San Antonio or outside of the area. Whether or not they can attend an evening meeting, I don't know. That's going to be something we have to look at. Okay. But the other thing is that perhaps maybe we can do a short summary in the paper of some of the things that were discussed in past. I don't believe that they need to know about personnel problems. I don't need to, there are certain things that
should be said and not be said.
Right, exactly. I mean, they're kind of a private thing, right? But if there are major decisions and we're going to put a new building up, or we're going to go ahead and build a new road from here to here, I think that is those are the kind of things that people really need to know. So again, let's take a look at what we can share with the public and still try and keep it as transparent as we can on subjects like that.
Okay, I would say again, as a citizen who does attend Commissioners Court, I've talked to many people who have suggestions and share kind of their experiences with trying to attend Commissioners Court. And I think it's important to hear kind of how everything works. And what's really important in regard to this question is, the meetings begin at 10 o'clock, and they are very lengthy. If you haven't been to a Commissioners Court, sometimes the agendas can go for almost 2 hours, depending on what they have to discuss. So some of the complaints some of our citizens have had are, it's during working hours, I can't make it at this particular time. I would agree with that in certain instances because I co-manage 2 local businesses. So one of us has to stay at our local business while I go to a meeting, so on and so forth. So I understand the time in the morning would probably work best for everyone. However, I have suggested in the past, and many have as well, that live streams are the best way to connect our community because they can be viewed again. You can obviously share them. So they can cover more ground, and we know that that is the case. So a request for live streams, unfortunately, not only by our county, but by our other local institutions, have been avoided. And this is something as a citizen that I have a problem with, personally, and many do as well, is if there's nothing to hide, which gives the impression that there is when there's an avoidance of a live stream or a video or making information public. If there's nothing to hide, then there should be no reason why we shouldn't be live streaming any meeting or presenting an opportunity for our community to get the information. When it comes to private matters, that's completely understandable that things shouldn't be discussed, and I know that's why there's a section in a particular meeting where there's an executive session where there's basically a pause and the leaders go and discuss private matters. So those are things I understand. Something that's been shared with me before is, we don't want anyone to edit video or make something sound a certain way that may give off an impression that there is something going on behind the scenes, what have you. With live streams, it's my perspective that you can't edit live streams. It's just one continuous stream. And that's an easy way to kind of get the information out. We know that the paper obviously is important. We have to keep putting the information out in the paper. But when it comes to changing the meetings, I personally understand if it's at 10 and that can't be changed, that's something I guess that may be able to be looked at. But I think live streams, in my opinion, would probably be the best way to handle that. It's my experience live streaming several meetings that I'm allowed to live stream that the community says this has been super helpful. Thank you for posting this. Thank you for allowing information to get out. And I know that's a big desire for the community. So if the county would allow that within reason, I think that would be a great win for our community. It would definitely be a big change.
Yeah.
I know that many would appreciate that. And it's my hope if those of you who are watching that are part of the school board and the city council, I would encourage you to also do the same for your meetings as well. And so that way our community can get the information that they need. So those are my 2 cents on that question. But this is a really big one, because if I can't attend this meeting because I have work or I have to pick up my children or I have an emergency, well, hey, I can watch that live stream. I can go back to it. I can listen to it on the road. And that's an easy way to kind of get caught up. And many people want to be able to hear what's going on. Now, I do want to separate that from just the gossip part, which is one thing that, unfortunately, many in our community will get sucked into. These live streams are not for gossip. And regardless of what any complaint a citizen has against a particular person in position in any one of these government institutions, city government institutions, the live streams are really just for the purpose of the information. And we can't control pleasing everybody. I know that every leader has to deal with that reality. But we also want to make it clear that live streams aren't for gossip. They're for the information. And if someone does have a grievance, there's always the right way to go about it when it comes to calling you, setting up a meeting with you, and then getting all the information that they need, for their own maybe complaint or concern that they may have.
Right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our next question. That was a very important one. Now, the county judge holds one vote on Commissioner's Court. What experiences do you have that ensures our voters that you can work with the other 4 commissioners to get enough votes to pass a policy that you might have suggested during your campaign?
Again, I'm going to revert back to the fact that as the Chamber of Commerce, I've had a lot of dealings with, the commissioners. They've always been willing to help in our events or whatever we have to do. I don't think there's going to be a problem as long as we sit and talk about the matter that I bring before them, right? Again, I've said before, everybody has their own opinion, but we have to, again, look at the whole, right? I don't think that I have any problems with any of the commissioners, Peter, at this current time. I really don't. They've always been willing to help.
Okay, Paula. I know that when it comes to just making a decision, again, part of Commissioner's Court, you got to show up so you can see the conversations that are had. Whenever something is being suggested or put forth in the agenda, the county judge will always ask, yay or nay, so to speak. And there has to be an agreement. And if there isn't an agreement, then it's tabled so it can be revisited at another time. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that, what you would do. On to our next question. If a resident came to you with a proposal to build a new piece of public infrastructure in our county, a road, bridge, etc., how would you evaluate whether or not that project is worth approving? Okay.
Anytime that you have a project like that, you're going to take a look at the feasibility, first of all, okay? What is the purpose of the project? What is it that you're concerned with? How are we going to look at this? Then, of course, you have to do your due diligence on the project, whether or not it's something that we can do, right? Because of rules and regulations that are put in place. We know that, right? So is it going to be for the greater good? Because, I can want a little bridge built across from my house to the road, but is it really going to benefit the rest of the community? So again, it's feasibility, the due diligence, and then getting everybody on board that we all agree to that project, that it is in fact something that we need to do.
Yeah, I think that if anybody is involved in our community, sometimes there'll be an idea. For example, let's build a playground in a particular section of the community, and let's do it for such and such reasons. So as a county judge, you look at the budget, you look at how it not just benefits the person who's suggesting that the playground be built, but how it would be beneficial for the entire community. Exactly. So it would be that across the board, whether it is that bridge from maybe your house to someone else's house. How does it benefit the community? And this goes back again to the importance of the budget and the importance of where the county is putting money in to certain areas of our community.
Right.
So if you have suggested anything in our community as far as maybe a playground or any type of piece of infrastructure, understand when it comes to making decisions, it's important you have a balance. You always have to have those who are considering all of the elements and facts before something can be put up, because it doesn't happen overnight. But it's also important for you as a citizen to make sure you're following up with those suggestions and be open-minded as well if something doesn't go through. Right. And if it does go through and it's great for the community, then it's a win for everybody. So always be gracious towards those who are in a leadership position. They do have a hard job, and it's important that not only one person is making the decision, that it does come through an agreement and that there are votes. But I also want to challenge you as a citizen. It's important to attend as many meetings as you can, because it's easy to hear a decision and say, oh, well, they made this decision regardless of anyone else's input. And really, our leaders should and do wait for our community to be involved and to say something. And that's how a lot of changes happen as well, is if something's proposed, show up. If you have a complaint or concern, make sure that you voice it. And that's a way that our elected officials know if they're doing a good job as well, and if what they're doing pleases the community. Okay, let's go on to our next question. If elected, what are the steps that you would take to make our county more financially secure?
Okay. Looking at the financial picture of the county, I think right now we're sitting in a pretty good spot. We are. One of the advantages, though, of being an entity like the county or the city, whatever, is that there are grants available to help, especially our rural areas. And I think we need to really look at what's available. Now, we have a grant planner, right? And it's going to be her job to take a look at what is available for Dimmit County. Why don't we tap into those sources? Because some of that money, of course, can help us go a long way in this community. It really can, Peter.
Okay. I don't think many are aware that there are grants that are available to the community, and that's going to be kind of part of another question that we have when it comes to the budget presently and how that will be utilized. That's going to be part of our next questions. But I know that there's always kind of an interest in how we can make our community better. So another challenge for our citizens, if you have these ideas on how to make our community better, leave a comment and make sure you attend the Commissioner's Court once again. On to our next question. Now, the current county judge, along with the past and current county administration, have managed to save a sizable amount of funds for Dimmit County. Do you have a plan to continue saving or increasing this balance for our county, or do you propose spending?
Okay, first of all, let me say that savings is important because of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen. We have to have that cushion, right? We have an aging infrastructure that's going to have to be fixed. And instead of going out for a loan, we have to have that money in the bank. Wouldn't it be nice, right?
Yeah.
However, if the spending is going to be based on something that's important to us, I don't have a problem with spending on things that are going to benefit, Peter. But I do believe in having that savings cushion. I really do.
Now, I'm sure that many don't really understand kind of how that works when it comes to having a sizable amount in the budget. What are some things that you think might come up that we might face that would cause the county, to have to use those funds? It would be like a disaster, something in our area of that sort?
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. Disasters. We don't know what's going to happen, right? We really don't. We're not always prepared for what's going to happen, but we'd like to think that we have at least the ability to spend money on the necessary things that are going to help in that disaster relief. Absolutely.
Okay, on to our next question. What experiences do you have to instill confidence in our citizens that you are qualified and responsible for the substantial amount of our county's funds?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, I've had 18 years experience in administration of business. That was with my prior employer in Chicago. I was responsible, Peter, for a block of business that was worth $30 million a year. I was also responsible for overseeing the finances and the benefit administration for over 10,000 employees of Butterball Turkey, Armour Swift Deckridge, Longmont Poultry, and Hebrew National Foods. These were nationwide plants that were funneled into my office in order to take care of that. I had to have my work audited. I oversaw 35 people. Their work was audited once a year. Random audits. They would come and they'd just pull files, okay? Mm-hmm. They would do the audits, and I have to say that the people that worked for me were awesome. They were well trained, that they had a 99.9% effective percentage on how they process those administration claims. It was a lot of work. I worked my way, through the corporate ladder, but yeah. That alone, being involved in a corporation like that, or corporations, because there were a number of companies underneath that, gave me a lot of the experience on big money matters, okay? They also had the training for us in managerial skills, leadership skills, diversity training, all that is part of a big business. So when it comes to big business and big money, Peter, it doesn't bother me. I'm not intimidated by it because I had to deal with it.
Thank you, Paula. Now, if you received a large grant to use for the county, how would you utilize those funds? Recently, the county received a COVID relief grant, for example. And part of the monies were distributed to local businesses who needed the help during the COVID-19 pandemic. How would you utilize the remaining money?
First of all, I have to tell you, grants are very specific in what you can use the money for.
Okay.
When you do the grant application, it asks you all these questions, right? So you just can't take grant money given for one purpose and distribute it out to have parties.
Okay.
You can't do that. If you do that, that's going to be considered a misappropriation of a fund.
Yeah.
And they can ask for that money back. So again,
Okay.
I'm not sure how that grant was done for that COVID-19 to find out exactly what specifics you can use that money for.
And how it could be distributed afterwards if there was a remaining
Absolutely.
balance.
There's got to be rules and procedures in place.
Sure. And I think that's an important point. When it comes to a grant, if you're not aware of that, there's an application and there's stipulations for that grant, which you're going to be utilizing it for. Yeah. And after that, as you just mentioned, if it's misappropriated, then of course somebody's going to be in trouble. So let's remember that distinction when it comes to grants being approved. If you attend a commissioner's court and you are hearing about those grants. So I think that's a very important piece of information to anybody who might have a question of how is this going to be utilized afterwards? Which for this one, this is obviously an important question for those in our community who receive some of these funds for their local businesses. From what I understand, there is still money left over. And so how will that be used for maybe other local businesses or related to that local business? So I think that'd be something maybe we can have an answer on in fuller detail later on. Thank you, Paula. Next question. What is your opinion on raises within the county? Some feel that certain raise increases may be unnecessary. How would you handle fair raise increases?
Okay, now it's going to take me back to my prior training in management. Okay. We had a system of merit increases. I believe that people earn the right to have a raise. I don't believe in across-the-board raises. Okay. I have a problem with raises that are just voted in, just because you've been there for whatever time. When you look at a regular merit increase, you have a percentage, say a 1% raise to a 10% raise, right? You look at your employees. It's important to do performance evaluations. The performance evaluation will tell you if this person only works to do this, but you have another person who is really, really involved, always asking to try and do something better. How can they improve? How can they grow with the company? That's a whole other avenue you have to follow. So you have people getting maybe 1%, some getting 5%, and then these people who are really working a 10% increase.
Yeah.
That's the only way that I've ever seen a increase structure for raises.
Okay.
There are a lot of people here who work in our county who haven't received a raise in years. You know, they're out there working every day, but they haven't received the raise. So I can't speak for those employers because I don't know what their method is of giving raises.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I don't believe in across the board raises either, because I think that people need to be looked at individually into what they're doing.
Okay, Paula, I think let's talk about that really quickly. Across the board raises, for example. So across the board raises, would it be fair to say if we do that, other employees that feel that they deserve a raise because of their hard work might feel overlooked? Is that kind of the danger in across the board raises? Could you expound on that? Why would you not view that as a positive?
Absolutely. I think that because I think that, again, that based on the individual and what they're doing, you know, they have to be looked at as the person that comes to work every day. I do my job and I'm doing it right, what I think is right. And yet the guy who doesn't, or the girl that doesn't do anything is getting the same thing that I'm getting. We have to value our employees. That's another thing, Peter, that the employees matter. I really want to take a look at the policies in place for them. I believe that we really have to have a human resource office for the county. I really think that employees need a place to go to maybe grieve or maybe just talk without feeling intimidated or in feeling that their boss is going to come back at them. That's not right. Employees have a voice too. And that's one of the things that I really, really would like to put in place is a human resource office for our employees.
Wow, that's a really great suggestion. And if you're an employee or if you're someone who has noticed that, you know, currently, and you like that suggestion, please leave a comment below this video on this section, please. Okay, let's go on to our next question.
Okay.
And this has to do with taxes, which everyone is concerned about. And we want to talk about this for a little bit. But this question was posed from a member in our community, and they asked, do you have a plan to reduce property taxes? And of course, it's important for, you know, anybody who owns property. So what do you have to say to that, Paula?
Okay. First of all, let me say that, you know, that the taxes or property taxes, you know, are set by the elected officials, okay? It has nothing to do with Austin or the state of Texas. It's our local officials who set the rate. I think when they take a look at the rate, Peter, what the rate was in the prior years, is that money going to be enough to cover the budget needs or what they need the money for? Okay. Or do they want to go way over here and say, no, we're going to set the highest tax rate so we can get the most money? Okay. That's not a smart idea because remember, I'm a property owner. You're a property owner.
Yes, ma'am.
That vote on that increase is going to affect us.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? It is. So we have to be, what's the word I'm looking for, careful on how we look at the tax rates. Now, we have taxing entities. We have the schools, of course, the county, the city, and the hospital. And I am part of the district regional board for the hospital, which is a taxing entity now, right? Okay. And again, we take a look. Okay, so if we raise it this much, we're just going to cover. If you raise it just a little bit more, we're going to have a little bit left. But you don't want to be over here because you know what? People are going to start complaining.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's really not fair. I think property values have increased, and I want to say to a point where sometimes I think it's ridiculous. The poor people who have been working at the same job, making the same income, right?
Yes.
Trying to get through the gas, the foods, everything else, medicine that goes with it. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to hit them with this high tax rate.
Yeah.
The elderly, I feel sorry for. They can hardly make it on what they're doing. And even though they get the exemption of the homestead and the over 65, you know what? It's still hard to live in today's world, to make ends meet. So I think that's a question that you really have to look into it. And as the taxing entity, whether you're the county or the city or whatever, you need to bring it down to the level of a person who is living in this community and who has to come forth and pay those bills.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, for those who maybe don't own property, this may be an issue that isn't really a big issue. But we are Dimmit County, so there's a lot of property owners, and this is a very important question for them. So basically what you're saying is if you are elected, you would look at the tax rates, and with all the information that you just shared, you would look and see what would be the best option.
Right.
And of course, through votes and through the Commissioner's Court, if it is really, really high, would you try to reduce that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that you do have my word on. If there's a way to bring it down, yeah, we need to do that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Paula. On to our next question. And this is another one that impacts everybody in our community when it comes to local law enforcement. The question posed by a community member is, if elected, how would you improve relations with the Sheriff's Department and other local government entities?
I think that it's important that we work as a team. You cannot have the county and the sheriff, and even the Border Patrol, because they're part of our organization, not being on the same page, especially when it comes to the protection of our people. I think that if the resources are there where we can hire more personnel, we improve the equipment, getting back to the radios, putting in the cell towers and the repeaters, anything that we can do to help for the safety of our people. It's no secret, Peter. We have seen what's happened here, right? There's so much going on in this little community that I worry for the safety of our people. I worry for our property. We have to get on board together, to work together. I don't think there's a question on that. We have to do it.
Yes, ma'am. If I can add to that question, one thing that we do know when it comes to the Sheriff's Department and those who are working really hard and who have been part of these meetings, I've come across many personally, and I'm not going to share names or anything of that nature, but who feel that there is another disconnect between the county and the Sheriff's Department, that there's not enough agreement. And, both can share their opinions on both sides, of course, but there is a need, from what I understand, to better connect the Sheriff's Department with the county, to have better conversations, to have better solutions. And as you mentioned, this is important when you go to a Commissioner's Court and you hear kind of what has happened throughout the past month, and they kind of give a list of what has taken place. You see that there needs to be better connection. There needs to be better relationships. And obviously none of them are going to be always perfect, but for the greater good of our community, making sure that takes place. And that leads us into our next question when it comes to the Sheriff's Department and our community and all of the things that we see happening in our community in regard to the border. Our next question is, what is your perspective on the border crisis and how it has negatively impacted Dimmit County? And what would you do to help inform and better protect our citizens?
Well, you know as well as I, Peter, that what's happened here in our little community because of what's going on the southern border definitely has negatively impacted our people. We see it sometimes on a day-to-day basis, It's not easy, I think, at the county level. I think I've told you that because this is really a federal crisis.
Yes, ma'am.
It is, right? So I don't know what other counties are doing to try and improve that. All I can say is that we have to have some type of a plan to go forward on this. I don't think that the administration is doing nearly enough to help the border states, especially us. We need the help. We can't do this anymore. It's overwhelming. For both the county sheriffs or deputies, the Border Patrol, it is something that we never imagined. So if we never imagined it, how could we have possibly prepared for it? We're not prepared for it. We need to come to some type of, I don't know if it's going to be a group meeting or something that is going to draw attention to the federal people. They need to figure out how to fix this. It's broken. The immigration system is broken.
Yes, ma'am. I think we can agree that we have been negatively impacted in our community by the border crisis. I think the first step is for our leaders to admit that this is a problem. I'm going to share, as a citizen, being one involved in this particular area, this is also a concern of mine, as it is for a majority of the members of our community who have had car chases in their local neighborhoods, bailouts, property damages, threats as well, and have feared for their lives at certain points, don't feel comfortable that their kids can even play outside in regard to this. That first, our leaders admitting that this is a problem. Many of leaders in our community have, but from the perspective of many, and I speak on behalf of those, many in our community believe that not enough is being done, and being done in the sense of hearing our voices and outwardly showing that it's a problem. Not treating it as, well, this has happened in every administration, it's always going to happen, and we just need to write it out type of attitude. I believe that that's not the right attitude to have, which has led us to being involved the way we have been involved, documenting evidence, video evidence, testimonial evidence from our community, is first admitting that this is a problem, and then how can we solve it. This present administration last year signed a declaration, a local state of disaster declaration. We took that to Governor Abbott. Myself and my wife had the privilege of taking that signed document to Governor Abbott at one of the Border Summit meetings. And I believe that was a good step in at least declaring that we had a problem. However, there wasn't much follow-up after that. I personally would like to see that revisited and how that will continue to help our community. And of course, that is going to continue to provide funds for the community and for the Sheriff's Department. That's what the disaster declaration does. But I believe that those are one of the many things that can be done, which is acknowledging that we need to do something. You suggested a meeting. How do we have a meeting to, make everyone feel that what we're doing when we see a car chase zip through town, or we see persons who have crossed over illegally on the side of the road with the Sheriff's Department, how do we make our community feel that we're actually doing something about it? I know every county is doing things a little bit differently, and that's something we also have to understand is every county approaches it differently. Would you be open to suggestions from other counties and what they're doing, and how, if it's working or not working? Would you be open to something like that?
Oh, absolutely. I think the more ideas that you have from other people who are going through the same thing, look at the best practices. What are we going to do to maybe make it like that county or another county, I'm open. I'm open for suggestions. I'm open for ideas, because this is a problem, Peter, that we have to work on.
Yes, ma'am. So then you would agree if somebody had that concern and they come to you and say, this is happening to us on a daily basis, your door would be open to them to hear their concerns, and you would do your best to find a solution as best as you can.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I appreciate that, Paula. Now, we know that this is a problem that every county is going to be faced with until something changes. And you said it's federal. It is federal, dealing with this present administration. Until these policies change or leadership changes, it's going to continue. My perspective on this has always been Dimmit County needs to take care of its own house. We at this point can't change a lot of things federally, but Dimmit County can take care of its own house. So how do we do that better? When it comes to the involvement of the county, I want to talk about this really quickly, is what can the county actually do and not do when it comes to this particular issue? Because some of our citizens have said, well, hey, the county needs to do this, the county needs to do that. We know the Sheriff's Department's out there doing what the Sheriff's Department does, and our state troopers and so on and so forth. But what can the county do and not do? Can we make that a little bit clear maybe for our citizens?
Well, that's another thing that I have to look at what the law allows us to do, Peter.
Okay.
Because, a lot of times our hands are tied, and that we can't do this and we can't do that because it's this. So one of the challenges will be to take a look at what we're allowed to do. But if we're allowed to do it, we better be doing it.
Thank you, Paula. Let's go ahead and move on to our next couple of questions as we wrap our conversation up. Now, our next question is, voting is coming up in November. Could you explain to our viewers where they can vote? This is something that's confusing for many in our community. We're coming up to November. Many have already done early voting. How does all that work? Where can those who are still wanting to vote go vote?
Okay. Well, first of all, yes, the general election is November 8th, right? Early voting starts October 24th, okay? And I have a list of the precincts where people can vote. But one of the things I want to tell them before I tell them this is everybody who's a registered voter can vote again in November.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who you voted for in the primary. This is an opportunity to make another decision for the county.
I see. And that's a very important piece of information. I know several who had maybe some issues on where they should go and accidentally voted somewhere else.
Right.
And so many feel, well, I can't go vote again. I already did it. So you're saying they can go vote again.
Absolutely.
And where would they go vote in case they didn't read the newspaper and don't have the information? If they wanted, for example, to go vote for you, where would they go vote? Or if they wanted to vote for the other candidate?
For the early voting, everybody needs to go to the courthouse annex, which is the new annex, okay?
Okay.
Now, when it comes time to the actual election day, the precincts are set and they have their voting places. So look at your voter card. What precinct are you in? Okay. So precinct 1 is going to be at the courthouse annex again on the day of voting. Precinct 2 is going to be the old band hall, which is where the school board meetings are held, right? On Nopal Street. Precinct 3 is going to be the Justice of the Peace office building in Big Wells. Precinct 4, St. Henrik's Parish Hall in Catarina. 5, City Hall in Asherton. 6, at the Dimmit County Volunteer Fire Department Station on First Street. And 7 is going to be at the Dimmit County Courthouse South, which was the old ag building right on 5th Street. Okay. So those are where your precincts are. But again, look at your voter card.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, you know, I didn't look. Well, they'll tell you when you go to sign, oh, sorry, you're not in this precinct, you're in that precinct. So it's important that you know where your precincts are.
Okay, another question that was asked, has been asked, is if I'm on a Democrat ballot, if I'm going to vote for a Democrat candidate, do I still go to those same precincts? Or if I'm going to vote for you, can I still vote in my same precinct? Or is it a specific place?
The ballot is going to have all the names on one ballot. Okay,
One ballot. So no matter where you go,
exactly,
both names will be there.
Yes.
Okay. That's a very important piece of information, a very common question. So I appreciate those who ask that, which is, again, I mean, most of us just don't know, don't have the information. So just to kind of put it all together, if you have your voter card, it'll show you where your precinct is, meaning everything's divided up into locations, into precincts, and it'll tell you where you are based on where you live. You go to that precinct and you vote. Now, both names will be on the ballot. So wherever you're at, you go and you vote at that precinct.
Right.
Pretty simple. Okay, great. And now our final question. It's been wonderful, Paula. Thank you so much for your time and taking the opportunity to share all of these important answers to our community. And there's a lot more that we could have talked about, but these cover kind of the basic general areas that most people are concerned about.
Yes.
So we really appreciate the time that you've taken out to do that with us, to do it with our community. And our last question, Paula, is, do you have any final words to your potential voters?
I want to assure the voters in Dimmit County, Peter, that I am going to do the best for them, that they're my priority, that I am going to take a look at different avenues, even with the economic development programs, to try and bring more jobs to this county. I think it's important that we also look at the future of our children. We've said this before, that the kids go to school here, they graduate, they leave, and they don't come back. We need to give them some type of an opportunity for them to come back and build this community for the future. I have always worked hard for my positions. I have earned that hard work by being loyal and by being honest. And I can truly say that I have never taken anything without earning it or doing the hard work. It's part of that culture and values that my parents gave me. God, family, country. Dios, familia, patria. And if you can do a job to the best of your ability and do it well, it's really all we can ask of people. I'm asking for their trust and their respect in that order, because if I don't have the trust factor, if you don't trust me with the leadership position, then you know what? Then that has to be something that needs to be corrected. But I want to be given the opportunity, I want to be given the chance to not only lead this county, but to be a servant to the people.
Thank you so much, Paula, for this wonderful conversation and for addressing our viewers, the viewers of our community. And I want to let you know, everyone, that this is an important process that is a responsibility of every citizen in our community. We all have the ability to make these decisions, and when somebody is running for a position, it's up to us to listen, to have discernment, to have understanding, and to vote accordingly with the information that's presented to us. So I hope that this information has helped you and it better informs your vote. So Dimmit County, get out there and vote. God bless.